Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast as you're driving along in your car or your truck or on public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the people who've been arrested, nearly all straight white males, but some women, people who've been arrested in the recent protests in the United Kingdom, in Britain. And how many of these people that are arrested on charges such as failing to disperse quickly enough, you arrest people for that, or for a mean tweet or sharing something on social media that the state doesn't like. I mean, these are now, you have an actual squad of police coming around to arrest you. Who could imagine something like this would ever occur? But yet here we are. But what's interesting, and I didn't pick up on this straight away, was the amount of these people who are arrested who are pleading guilty. Now, this suits the state because it expedites the whole process. You know, if you've got to go through a court case and witnesses, police, giving evidence, this sort of thing, they don't like it when outcomes are meant to be predetermined, and these clearly are, in my view. Then the state doesn't like people insisting on their legal rights. It just slows things down. It adds cost. It's just an irritation. Just plead guilty and fall over, you evil Nazi mother. So. Why are these people pleading guilty, though? I mean, if you get arrested for using a profanity, or again, in one case, they're failing to disperse quickly enough, then that seems quite astonishing. You'd get arrested in the first place. I mean, the police should have plenty of serious things to. I've noticed when Brown or Islamic people get together and hurl profanities at the police, they don't get arrested. But here are these elderly white people who have no criminal history of any sort. They're completely unknown to the authorities in legal terms, and yet they're arrested on a whim. They're arbitrarily arrested, I would argue, and they're thrown in prison and dragged in front of the courts. And somehow they're deciding to plead guilty. Now, these are not rich people or wealthy people, so I'm assuming that they've got access to or offered a legal aid duty solicitor of some sort, a lawyer, and that these lawyers are saying, "Look, you should really plead guilty. That's what you should do." Well, what will it mean if I plead guilty? They ask. Oh, nothing much. You'll get a bit of it. So, are these people being told to plead guilty because they're deceived into believing they'll get, a bit of a finger wagging and they'll just walk out the door 5 minutes later? Or are they threatened with something more dire? Well, you better plead guilty and get a couple of years, because if you don't, you'll be charged under terrorism laws and you'll get 10 years, 20 years in prison. The rest of it, you'll die in prison. Are they getting threatened or deceived? Because it's got to be one or the other. You don't plead guilty if you've committed no crime. You should put the burden of proof on the state to say, well, what crime have I committed? Let's have a look at that. Now, the activist judge and the activist prosecutor may still conspire to make sure you get done for him. They probably would and will. That seems to be in my view, that seems to be the pattern of things at the moment. But it's just interesting that so many people who are arrested for non-crimes or minor misdemeanor crimes would be pleading guilty and then getting 18 months or 2 years or 3 years in prison. That's astonishing. No sane person could accept that as being anything resembling a reasonable, sensible, or appropriate, as in proportional to the crime outcome. So. But once we go, and we're in that path fully now, once we go down the path of ideological law, things are a little bit different. These people haven't committed any actual crime, but what they have done is they've defied and been against and opposed the globalist project. And the government in the UK doesn't represent the people anymore, and haven't for a long time. They represent the globalists and the globalist interests. these people who are protesting, defying the globalist interest, the globalist project, and they must be crushed. Defiance must be crushed, particularly if it's ideological. And these courts and these verdicts and outcomes are of anything ideological. So now I'll go back to and I often reference, my point of reference for ideological law is always my first encounter with it, which was the divorce courts. And again, just quickly recapping, I was a VP of a company that was producing new high-tech products, and so we had a lot of high-tech engineers, computer programmers, a lot of very bright guys who they were essential to the functioning of the company, and they were well-paid guys. But they were, because their incomes were high and they were working long hours, they had sometimes rather fraught relationships, whether it be with a wife or a de facto partner or a girlfriend or something like this. So they were these girls were seeing the golden goose there, and when the relationship ended, they were getting dragged through the divorce courts, and they were getting torn to pieces financially. And because of this, I was losing a lot of these guys. They would just sit down in front of me and say, "Hey, Billy Bob, I can't work anymore. They're taking and going to take and threatening to take so much money from me. There's no point me working at a well-paying job. I might as well be a floor sweeper or work." One guy went to washing windows for cash. And insisting he would be better off doing that than he would be producing the technology of tomorrow. That's how bad it was. And some of these guys were recording the conversations they were having with the various ideological hacks and goons who were around the divorce court, but also recording conversations with their own lawyers. Lawyers they're paying. Now, these guys are, got big salaries and everything. They can afford to hire a lawyer, and they were, some of them were burning well over 100. This is back in the day, well over $100,000 in legal fees. So paying their lawyer. Now some of them were recording these conversations, and the lawyer was their own lawyer was saying, "Look, why don't you just roll over? Just give her the money. Just give her the house. Just give it to her. It'll be easier for everybody in the long run." And if the guy this is in the recorded telephone call, if the guy opposed, "Well, why should I give my house? I had to work years to buy that house." "Well, you do want the best for her, don't you? I mean, do you hate women? Is that your problem, Jimmy Jack?" And so the lawyer was actively, and I would argue aggressively, lobbying not for his own clients, the man who's paying him, but lobbying for the other side. Now, at the time, I thought that was rather strange. Why would somebody do that? I mean, they're your lawyer, not lawyer for the other side. But if listening to the recorded conversation, the view I came away with, and the guy as well, was that the lawyer actually was representing the other side, representing the woman here. And it wasn't that. It was that the lawyer was representing the ideology. The ideology of crush the straight white male, reward the victim, compensatory justice, restorative justice. It was that sort of ideological paradigm that the lawyer was representing. So the lawyer represented the ideology, and his client who was paying him was almost irrelevant. The ideology was the only thing that mattered. And I would see something approaching that here. You've opposed and questioned globalization, or you've been part of a movement, or you've got thought crimes, and your thought crimes are opposing and questioning globalization. So we intend to crush you for that. And okay, so you haven't committed a crime. Well, you haven't really done anything wrong. You haven't broken any law, but we want to coax you into taking a plea deal, well, not a plea deal, just pleading guilty. And we'll just pretend that we'll say to you, we'll go easy on you if you do that. You could get 10 years, but we'll only give you 3, or so, that type of stuff. Now, I don't know how bright these people are. They don't, certainly the ones that I've noticed, they don't seem to be particularly aware of the law and particularly bright. So if you give them a lawyer, like a legal aid lawyer, who's in fact part of the ideology, the legal aid lawyer's job isn't to represent those people who've just been arrested. It's to represent the ideologies, to represent the globalist project. So to say to these people, well, you better plead guilty, otherwise you could get a million years in prison. But we'll only give you 3. You may only get 2 or 3. I'll ask the judge to go easy on you. So instead of you taking out back and shooting you, we'll just give you 3 years in prison. So are they threatened with the most dire consequences if they don't plead guilty? Or what is it? So why should they plead guilty? So why should they say, well, I haven't committed a crime. Why should I plead guilty? So, well, the expense will be huge. Or the legal aid lawyer will say, look, we're prepared to represent you for free if you plead guilty. If you don't, you could be up for thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I mean, can you afford that? Because legal aid won't pay for it. We'll only pay the legal fees if you plead guilty. If you don't, then you're on your own, buddy. Can you afford a lawyer? No. Well, then what are you going to do? Are you going to represent yourself in court? That's not going to work out too. Oh, gee, all right then. Well, I suppose I'll plead guilty. Yeah, all right. Well, if you say so, lawyer. But they're not talking to their lawyer. They're talking to a representative of the globalist cabal who wants them to plead guilty so they can wave the scalps around and say, look at this straight white male baby boomer, the motherfucker Nazi fascist, Hitler. And, we showed him and he's getting 3 years in prison, and that's going to save the community from racist bigot Nazis. So this is the ideology that's being applied. And I think these people, in my view at least, are being suckered in. And again, they're not that bright. They're not aware of the legal ins and outs, and they're being intimidated. I would argue they're being intimidated and threatened and given a fait accompli type situation. If you don't do this, if you don't plead guilty, then it's going to be Armageddon. So that's your choice: plead guilty or Armageddon. That's it. What do you want? And I think it's been presented to them something along those lines, which are the same sort of tricks and tactics that were used again in the divorce courts. Well, if you don't give her the house and so on, you might have legal fees that'll go on for, and by the way, if you don't want to give her the house, I want another $50,000 payment up front. Do you have that $50,000? You don't? Well, you should really consider giving her that. And so they would give those devil or deep blue sea type options, and a number of men would just roll over and go, okay. Now you get some hard cases go, nah, fuck you, and they wouldn't go on. And they're the problem cases, and they're the ones that the odd few. I think the majority did to some degree roll over to those sort of threats and intimidation, and I would argue outright treachery, given that the person assumes it's their lawyer. It's I'm paying for this guy. He's giving me his best legal advice. I suppose I should accept it, without realizing that lawyer isn't in fact your lawyer. He's a representative and an advocate for the ideology, and that's something quite different. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.